and welcome to this video about MySQL errors. In this series of videos, I'm going to teach you how to troubleshoot some of the most common and easily fixed MySQL errors. So we're going to cover a whole range of things, but today we are looking at two very basic errors, 1007 and 1046, which are both can't create errors, which come up when you can't create an object in your database because it already exists. Let's head over to MySQL Workbench right now and see where these come up and how we can fix them. So we're over in MySQL Workbench now, which is the GUI or graphical user interface that we are using to communicate with MySQL Server, which is installed on this laptop. I am using the Mac version, so if you are on Windows, yours might look a little bit different, but hopefully everything is more or less in the same place. And for the purposes of this video, which is just about error troubleshooting, we shouldn't have too much of an issue there. If you do want to go and get familiar with what the Windows interface looks like, do head over to the other videos in the other folder and have a look at some of my earlier videos which show the Windows interface. So we are going to have a look at the context from which error 1007 and 1046 come. So we've just got some really simple SQL statements here. We are creating a database and creating a table. So that's all we're going to do to start off with. We're just going to highlight this SQL command, and I'm going to use the lightning bolt button up here to execute this selected portion of the script. So all of this is known as the script. We're going to execute, and as you can see, I get a nice little green tick. That is what we want. That is success, which is fantastic news. Then I'm going to tell MySQL we are going to be using the bakery database. So I'm actually going to execute this a slightly different way. I'm popping my cursor in the middle of this SQL statement, right between the beginning and the end, where the semicolon delimiter is, and I'm going to press this button instead, which executes the statement under the keyboard cursor. So that flashing line there, that's our cursor. And again, I get a green tick. That's what we want. Now, if I go away and I make a cup of coffee, and I come back and I say, oh, did I create that database? And maybe I've actually cleared this output pane because it was a little cluttered and I didn't like that. And I was like, oh man, I can't remember. Did I create this database or not? Better just create it again. Let's see what happens. Now you'll see I am getting an error here in the action output window. So here we've got error code 1007, and if I expand this response cell, it says can't create database, bakery database, which is what I named it, database exists. Now, this is one of the most descriptive MySQL errors that you'll get. A lot of them aren't that descriptive at all, which is why I'm creating this series. This is telling us a lot of information though. This is saying the error is we cannot make this database, and the reason is because it already exists. So this is a little bit of a technical coding concept, but I think it's really useful. There's a concept known as a namespace, which is basically an area in your computer, in this case MySQL Server, where names are associated with certain objects in the software world. So in this case, a database is an object, and every object has to be uniquely named, right? Because the computer needs to know what it's referring to when it uses that particular name. So we can't have two objects named the same thing. This is why this error is coming up, because when we created this database before, we said, we are creating this object, it's a database object, and we are assigning the name bakery_database to that object. So if I try and create another database and I give it exactly the same name, MySQL is going to say, hey, no, that could be a problem because if I don't know which one you're referring to, I'm going to put stuff in the wrong place sometimes. So this is why we have to have unique names. Now, if I popped a 1 at the end of the statement and I executed this again, then you see it's absolutely fine. It has successfully created this second database, a different database this time with a slightly different name. So that is our error 1007, where it comes from. How do we avoid this? Well, the simplest thing to do is just to avoid making your database more than once. So not clearing that action output pane, making sure that you have a log of every action that you've taken is a really easy way for you to keep track of what you've done. Another thing you can do is you can add a comment. I created this database on 22nd May 23. And so then you can refer back to that markdown element, that comment in your script. MySQL will ignore this, but you have that for your records. So that's error 1007. We are going to move on now to 1046, which is a slightly different error related to tables. So welcome back to MySQL Workbench. We are going to explore our second error of the day, which is error 1046. So before we saw that creating a database, or two databases I should say, with the same name created this error 1007. We are going to tell MySQL to use our original Bakery database, and we're going to create a table in it. Now, I'm not going to go through the syntax for this table creation statement. There is a whole video on creating databases and tables in the other folder, so please do go and have a look at that video. However, in this statement, we are basically just creating a very simple table with 4 columns with a range of data types here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to highlight this whole section of the script in blue, and I'm just going to press that lightning bolt to create the table. And as we can see, we've got the green tick. That action has been successful. 0 rows have been affected. That makes sense because this is an empty table. We don't have any data in it yet, so there are no rows of data. So once again, let's see what we have got when we execute this statement again, effectively creating a second table that's also called sweet items. So again, we get this error code here. Error code 1050, table sweet items already exists. So this is, that's a slightly different error code than I was expecting, interestingly. I was expecting 1046. Anyhow, we haven't got the ability to create this table because we haven't got an empty space where this name lives, right? We already created an object, in this case a table, where we had saved this table schema, this table kind of construction. So we don't have the ability to create this other table. Now, again, if I say I want to create sweet items 2, this is exactly the same table in terms of its data that it contains, the constraints that we're putting on it, but it's got a different name, crucially. So that will be successful. Now, a common question that kind of comes after these is, well, why can I execute some statements multiple times in a row in MySQL and I don't get an error, whereas sometimes you do get these errors? So it all lies in whether you are creating an object with a name or not. Now, here I've got a simple select statement. We are going to execute this, and our empty table that we just created is going to come back here in our results grid. We can see that if we do this again, if I just execute this statement again, once again popping my cursor in the middle and pressing execute again, I'm going to get another tick, and the same empty table comes back. So why am I not able to create the same table twice in a row, but I am able to do this? Well, we're not creating anything here. It looks like we are, because we are bringing something back. We're saying bring everything in this table back so I can see what's in this table, but I'm not actually creating anything. I've already created this object called sweet items, and so I can execute this as many times as I like because it's referring to this thing that I have created, but I'm not trying to make something with the same name. And the same goes for the use bakery database statement that I used at the beginning of this video. I can tell it to use this bakery database until the cows come home. I'm just clicking execute over and over again. And as you can see, I'm not getting any errors. And again, that's because this is not creating an object. This is referring to an object that we already created, in this case, a database. So thanks for joining me as I explored those 2 errors. Hopefully this video is very informative and helps you to solve and avoid those errors in the future. Keep watching this series for more errors. I think the next one is going to be on referential integrity between tables using primary and foreign keys. So I'll see you next time. Bye.